Hi everyone, this is Siqian Zhao from SUNY Albany. Today I'm going to present our paper in collaboration with Chunpai Wang and Sherry Sahavi on how to model student learning when they are learning from different learning material types. My presentation has 4 parts. Firstly, I'm going to go through the introduction. Then I will introduce our model. Next, I'm going to talk about the 3 ways we evaluate our model and experiment results. Let's start with introduction. As we know, student knowledge modeling and domain knowledge modeling are 2 important topics in educational data mining. Solving these problems helps to create a coherent study plan for students, analyze students' knowledge gaps, or other tasks in improving learning for students. We know that students learn from all kinds of learning materials. For example, this figure shows that students can learn from video lectures, readings, and programs. Also, learning materials can cover similar concepts. Studying one learning material can transfer into the knowledge that is presented in another one. Ideally, we should be able to model students' knowledge gain from all of these learning material types and from the concept similarities that they have. However, existing works usually ignore learning from all learning material types and just consider a single type, for example, problems only. One reason is that modeling learning from learning materials that don't evaluate students' knowledge and are not graded is difficult. In this paper, we want to address these problems, so we propose a multi-view student knowledge model that can model student knowledge gain from different types of learning materials. We call it MVKM. MVKM can find latent factors or concepts from different learning material types and capture the similarities between them. We evaluate our model in 3 ways to show that MVKM outperform other baselines on both synthetic and real-world datasets. Let's first say our problem formulation, and then I will introduce our model. For each learning material type, we represent students' interactions in a tensor. Our tensor has 3 dimensions: students, learning materials, and attempts or learning points. Each element in tensor is an interaction of a student at an attempt of a learning material. For example, suppose the tensor is for students that are trying quizzes. This XSAP represents the score of student S at attempt A with quiz P. Now, let's go over our model. MVKM models learning from all material types. We define each tensor for each type of learning material type as a view. Our model can have multiple views, but for simplicity, I use 2 views to introduce our model without loss of generalizability. Suppose that we have quiz and lecture as the 2 views. We decompose these 2 tensors into 3 parts. First, a shared student feature matrix to capture students' latent features. For example, the features can represent students' preference on how to learn or their ability. Second, a shared knowledge tensor to capture how each kind of students learn each of the concepts in the learning material. The last part is 2 concept matrices, one for each learning material type, that show the latent concept covered by each learning material. Note that the concepts are shared between all types of materials. So for each student interaction in the tensor, it is equal to the product of student feature vector S, student's knowledge at attempt A, and learning material concept Q, plus 3 basis terms. We add basis term to consider data averages. For example, BS here is reflecting the average feedback of student S, and BP represents question difficulty. Now, this model so far doesn't have any constraints on how students learn or possibly forget the concepts. We assume that students' knowledge increases, but this increase is not strict. So we add a rank-based constraint to model this kind of knowledge increase. This constraint is inspired by students' knowledge increase as they practice. For example, This figure shows a student's score at each attempt that increased gradually by interacting with the learning material. We use this inequality to build a penalty term that encourages the estimated student performance to increase with different attempts, but allows for occasional forgetting of concepts. We have three kinds of experiments to evaluate our model. First, we experiment to validate if our model captures the variability of observed data. We call this experiment students' performance prediction. Then, we do students' knowledge modeling experiment to check if our model can have a meaningful representation of students' knowledge growth. The third experiment is learning resource modeling to study if MVKM meaningfully recovers learning materials concepts and their similarities. We use 6 datasets to evaluate our model. 3 of them are synthetic datasets. For real-world datasets, we select one course from the open online Canvas network platform. Quiz and discussion of this course are the 2 types of learning materials in our experiments. We also use 2 datasets from MOOC replication framework Morph. This platform includes different kinds of learning materials for one course, such as quiz, assignment, discussion, and lecture. We select quiz and discussion as one dataset, and quiz and lecture as another dataset. The statistics for these 6 datasets are shown in this table. We do 5-fold student stratified cross-validation. For each fold, we first split the students into 80% train and 20% target. For those 80% training students, we use all of their interaction records as training data. For the rest 20% target students, we predict the last 50% of their scores given the first 50% of their interactions. We do online testing, which means we predict testing data attempt by attempt. In total, we have 15 baselines to evaluate MVKM. There are 4 kinds of baselines. First, 5 baselines from educational data mining field. Some are tensor factorization models. Second, a tensor factorization baseline BPTF from recommendation system field. Third, in order to evaluate different parts of our method, we use 2 different settings of MVKM. MVKM base with only single learning material type, and MVKM without the knowledge increase constraint. Finally, we have a simple average baseline. Since all of these algorithms, except MVKM without the knowledge increase constraint, are single-view models, we have a multi-view setting for each algorithm, which means that we concatenate the 2 views into one tensor as their input. We call this kind of baselines method MVeil. We use RMSE and MAE as 2 evaluation metrics. The lower these errors, the better the prediction performance. Let's see how our model does in predicting students' performance compared with the baselines. It is easy to see from these 2 tables. Our method MVKM has the best performance on both synthetic and real-world datasets. Next, we want to see if adding external views or other learning material types help to improve prediction performance. To answer this, we should compare MVKM base that has only quiz interactions with MVKM. These 2 tables show that MVKM has much lower RMSE and MAE than MVKM base on all datasets. That means multi-view helps improve prediction performance. Last, we would like to see if adding the knowledge increase constraint helps in predicting students' performance. From the experiment's results for MVKM without knowledge increase constraint and MVKM, we found that MVKM has better results. In this sense, we can say that the knowledge increase constraint is essential to improve the prediction performance. Now, we focus on the second set of our experiments to evaluate our student knowledge modeling. We first check how our model captures students' knowledge gain. Then, we see the effect of knowledge increase constraint on the discovered knowledge gain trends. To check how our model captures students' knowledge gain, we visualize students' average knowledge in 3 discovered latent concepts across learning points. To have a better illustration, we only use one dataset from MORPH here. Other datasets have similar trends and are included in our paper. Here, x-axis is the index of attempt, while y-axis is the average knowledge of all students for concept 3, 5, and 7. It's easy to say that students' knowledge is increasing in general, but the increase is not strict. For example, there are 2 lectures here. That means our MVKM allows students to forget the gained knowledge at some points, but the general trend is increasing. Now, we check the effect of knowledge increase constraint on the discovered knowledge gain trends. Let's see what happens if we remove this constraint. These 2 plots are similar to the previous one, showing the average knowledge gain of all students for 3 concepts. The left one with knowledge increase constraint and the right one without it. This figure shows that without the knowledge constraint, student knowledge gain is not generally increasing and even has a U-shape for some concepts. So without the constraint, we cannot capture a meaningful knowledge trend. So the knowledge increase constraint is needed for our model. In the last set of our experiments, we evaluate how MVKM can model different learning resource types. We evaluate both within-type concept evaluation and between-type concept evaluation. To do this, we compare the similarity between learning material that is captured by our model with both the topic-based similarity between them and the similarity that is based on course structure. This figure shows the topic-based similarity process. First, we collect learning materials textual content, then use LDA to train a topic distribution, and use spectral clustering to cluster learning materials into different topic-based clusters. At the same time, we use spectral clustering on the concept matrices learned from MVKM to get MVKM-based clusters. Finally, we compare the 2 clustering results we obtained. Here, we show experiment results for within-type concept evaluation firstly. For structure-based similarity, we use the course schedule, so the learning materials in each course module are considered to be similar to each other, as shown with the same week numbers. Figure at left-hand side is for clusters discovered by MVKM, and clusters discovered by LDA are in figure at right-hand side. Rectangles show clusters. Colors show topic-based clusters. So learning materials with the same color are close to each other based on their topics. From the figures, we found that there are both structure similarities and content similarities in the concept matrices of MVKM. For example, lecture 5 of week 7 is clustered in group 8 on the left, not only because other lectures of week 7 are in the same group 8, but also because there are some lectures that have similar topics to it, such as these 2 videos from week 4 and also this video 4 from week 8. Moreover, we also found that MVKM mostly represents the course structure similarity. Usually, videos from the same week will be grouped in the same cluster. For example, all week 3's videos are in cluster 2. Then, for between-type concept evaluation, both content and structure similarities are captured by MVKM as well. For example, video 1 and 3 of week 2 are clustered in group 1 in MVKM because the first 3 videos of week 2 are all in this group. It is also because there are 2 videos from week 5 that have similar contents as them. Additionally, we found that assignments are usually grouped with their upcoming lecture. For example, assignment 4 and the first video of week 5 are grouped in the first cluster. To conclude, we propose a multi-view knowledge model that can model students' knowledge gain from multiple learning material types, can capture students' knowledge growth, and represent similarities between different learning material types. Our method also outperforms other baseline on both synthetic and real-world datasets in predicting student performance. That's all for today's presentation. Thanks for listening. Our codes are available at this GitHub link. If you have any problems or suggestions, please feel free to email us.